In this episode, we're going to talk about how you can set lead generation goals, some targets for your outbound sales, your cold emails, and so on. So it's really important that you have some goals for the lead generation process you have, and also your revenue targets. I was having a conversation with a founder the other day, and he was like, I asked him a very simple question. What is your revenue target for the next 3 months? And he's like, I don't have any goals. That's really not a place that you want to be at. So it's really important that you have goals that you can actually manage. So in sales, the only things that you can manage is the activity. You cannot actually manage the outcome, and the activity is a number of things you should do in order to kind of drive and enhance whatever outcome that you're looking for. So I'm going to walk you through a step 5 process that we use here at Katallyze that helps us to kind of stay focused in terms of goal setting. So the first one, so we usually want to do a reverse engineering, right? So you want to think of the revenue targets you have and then do a work it backwards to the number that you're looking for. So assuming you have a revenue target of, let's say, X amount of dollars, you want to work it back to conversations. How many meaningful conversations do you need to have? And most people will call this a sales qualified meeting. Whichever way you call it, you need to have some form of meaningful conversations happening. You also need to have meetings, and generally in B2B sales, these are marketing qualified meetings, people who have raised their hand and say, hey, let's have a conversation, show me a demo, and so on. So marketing qualified, people who are generally interested in your product because you reach out to them, you would have a lot more replying, especially in cold email. They'll say, oh yes, I'm interested, let's have a chat. So how many people would you need in order to reach this particular target? And then the final one is a targeted outreach. So how many super targeted people are you actually connecting with in order to have some kind of interest? So you walk yourself back through the process. If you know the revenue, how many meetings how many conversations, meaningful conversations you need to have, how many meetings, how many interested persons, and how many targeted people do you need to reach out to. The numbers might not always work out, but I think that the essence of having a very solid sales pipeline is being able to predict the numbers you have. So I'm going to use very, very generic numbers here. So let's say that out of every X amount of people we reach out to, I'm going to use this, out of every X amount of people we reach out to, 20% of them raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested. Out of that number, 80% of them move to some form of meetings. Out of that meeting, we have this amount of conversations, meaningful ones, and maybe 20% of that we close it. So let's say my goal is that I'm reaching out to 100 people, right? So 100 people, meaning that I need to 20% of 100. Come on, let's do the math here. 20% of 100. This is pretty easy. Let's say 20 people reach out and say, hey, I'm interested. And by the way, we get between 5 to 30% meeting rate as far as we are concerned. But I'm using 80% here just for purposes of this conversation. So out of the 20, 80% of them are interested. So your number here would be 16. You need to have 16 meetings for that level of outreach. And then out of the 16, maybe only 8% of them are actually qualified in terms of, do they have the budget? Are they a client that a potential client that you can actually add value? Do they have the budget, the authority, and so on? Whatever method people use, bonds, there's so many methods. Find the one that works for you. So 50% of them will be A, and out of that 8, how many of them are actually going to buy from you? So let's say 20% is a conversion rate, the final conversion. So that means that 20% out of 8, I believe, is around 2.6, but I'm going to use 3 here. So by knowing the number, you can actually know what kind of activity you need to take. Of course, you cannot influence the outcome as far as the conversations are concerned, which is why we encourage the clients we work with to have more and more conversations. The more conversations, the more meaningful conversations you have, the better you stand the chance of having someone who you can add value to. So that's the 5-step process we use. Let me know what you're using, what's working for you. Happy to learn from you as well. Remember, we're doing a lot more videos, talking about how you can increase your pipeline through lead generation. So remember to subscribe. And also, if you need help getting meetings with, decision makers, feel free to reach out to us, to my team at Katallyze.io, and we'll be happy to help. Wish you all the best. See you in the next episode.